I see you here as well, so thank you. I see many familiar names, and I'm glad to see you all here with us. I'll be adding links throughout the session, so please go ahead and use the links I just put in the chat. You'll see that I'm giving you access to our group webpage so you can stay up to date with what's going on. Our collaborative notes, please go ahead, sign in, put in your information, and feel free to continue adding in resources and items of interest there. And then our slides are also available as well. So those are to share. We'll be using those as we go forward, as you can tell. All right. So first, again, welcome all RDA new members. Please be sure to follow this interest group once you become a member. But remember, you do have to join RDA first. Um, The co-chairs identified 5 areas for discussion on certification, and those have been newly certified repositories, repositories that have or were unable to be certified, repositories that were recently certified, and then those that purposefully chose not to recertify, and those that only perform self-audits. Now, we were unable to secure speakers for the last two, so we'll review some questions, have a discussion. There's some resources and literature out there as well, and give the audience a chance to chime in as a part of that discussion as well. We'll have opportunities to give feedback and answer questions throughout the entire presentation. So let's not have this as a lecture. Let's have this as a conversation. Let's please use the chat at any time to add in questions, comments, that sort of thing. I also wanted to share that Kirsten Leonard is unable to join us today, but we're very grateful for Molly Selnick, who's going to be able to kick us off with the first session, which is going to happen right after this overview of the interest group. So as you can see, we're recognized and endorsed RDA WDS interest group. We have 226 or so members as of last week. And this organization, this interest group, has been around since the third plenary in 2014. You'll see 3 different working groups that have come out of this interest group. And we really focus on building work around digital repository certification. And finally, you can see the lineage of all of the leadership and great work that has happened. And my thanks to many of you on this call who have helped make this a useful and important working group. So again, remember, please go ahead and you can access that working group webpage as you're interested. If you're not a member, please go ahead and sign up. Okay, so let's move into the presentations from the 3 listed repositories. Again, as I shared briefly, Kirsten's not able to join us today, but we'll have Molly here with us. And then after that, we'll have Johan, and then Dawe will share with us. So Molly, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, please. Thank you.
All right. Good morning or afternoon, everybody. My name is Molly Selnick. I'm sorry, Kirsten couldn't be here. She had a travel conflict. I am for, I guess the way I would describe my role in the Astromet team is that I am a data steward, and I've been on Kirsten's team for about 3.5 years. And I'm looking forward to sharing information about Astromet with you. So as Meredith said, we are kind of in the category of newly certified, but Astromet, sorry, I'll back up. I haven't totally prepared this conversation. Um, Astromet, the Astromaterials Archive, is a primary archive for the cataloging, the archiving of astromaterials, analytical samples data. And we are located physically on the Lamont Doherty campus of Columbia University. Meredith, would you mind going to the next slide? Thank you so much. And now, historically, with the collection of astromaterials and extraterrestrial samples, we have a wide variety of sample types from a wide variety of countries that have collected these samples historically. As you can see here, the United States and Russia do lead that in terms of the sample return missions. But we do have other types of astromaterials samples data. Meredith, can you go to the next slide, please? Now, sample return missions are extremely costly. In today's dollars, the Apollo missions would be close to $260 billion if adjusted for inflation. Um, And subsequently, the OSIRIS-REx mission, which ended a few, yeah, which returned samples a few years back, and future missions are in the billions to collect these really precious samples that we have. Next, please. Now, one of the largest challenges around the astromaterial samples data was that the samples themselves were being curated, but not the data around them in a standardized or really centralized way. And so the samples that are collected, they have been disseminated globally with many research endeavors being carried out over, the last half century. And the samples themselves are cataloged very meticulously, but there was no archive for the analytical data that derive from the analysis of these samples. Next, please. Okay, wonderful. So now NASA stepped in about 10 years ago to start to create standardization around how we are going to preserve this analytical data for future use and with appropriate standards in metadata um, and stewardship around making sure that data is fair and reusable going forward. Next, please. So Astromet's beginnings, they actually go back quite a way. The first seed of Astromet was something called MoonDB, which was the restoration of lunar data. And that ballooned a bit into Astromet as it is today. We originally received funds in 2019 to restore data, and since then we have included, our scope has been broadened, and in 2022, we were named the primary archive for the samples returned from the OSIRIS-REx mission, and we are now a primary archive for sample, um, mission-based sample returns for NASA. Next, please. Now, oh, sorry, and I just spoke to this here, but because we are the primary archive for this data, we we want to, our goal is to be as proactive with the stewardship and proactive with ensuring fair compatibility and compliance, so that the investment that I mentioned earlier, not just the monetary investment, but the kind of investment all around is preserved for the future and for reuse. Next, please. So now the Astronaut Archive, we handle a wide array of different types of data, and um, we don't only have data that pertain to samples returned from missions. We do have data that spans other types of um, other other data types, if you will, of things like stardust, Antarctic meteorites, lunar cosmic dust, and so we have um, quite a catalog of these analytical samples. Next, please. So, and I'll speak through this very quickly, but what you're seeing here is a very high level of our workflow. We have on one side mission-based submissions to our archive, but we also have researcher-based submissions to our archive. They go through different pathways of curation. and they're available. We publish the data, we preserve it, we are available. Um, we make the data available, um, but then we also bring it into what we call the Astromat data synthesis, which then gets married with um, data rescue and literature-based publications. Next, please. So, as I said before, our goal is to be as proactive as possible when it comes to ensuring fair compliance. And that means exploring the rich metadata that comes along with these samples, ensuring that for reuse, the metadata is accessible in human and machine readable formats. We are making use of persistent identifiers as much as we can. We support our users, and we have tried to streamline our submission and curation workflows. Um, Next slide, please. Well, not most importantly, but one aspect of our curation workflows that we have folded in from a technology perspective, it's not live yet, but it is the capability of bringing in external reviewers as mandated by NASA policy for data to be reviewed by external reviewers. We brought in a service called Kotahi and integrated that into our curation activities so that we have the capability of doing that when the functionality goes live. Next, please. Thank you so much. So now another endeavor that we um, something that we endeavored to do was to see how our activities measure up to the Core Trust Seal certifications. And if you're not aware what Core Trust Seal is, it's an international organization that evaluates data repositories based on their trustworthiness in data, in stewardship, and in long-term preservation. So in 2004, myself and my colleague Robert Downs pursued kind of an internal audit of Astromat and our processes against the 16 different levels of trustworthiness that the Core Trust Seal looks for. And we discover notable improvements that we could make in the short term and the long term for Astromet. And they're listed here. Some of those quicker changes were to deprecate non-open licenses, to increase transparency for our users on our website about our submission policies, about our processes, with an effort of tending more towards fair compliance. We It took about 9, 10 months for our application to be reviewed, but we did receive the Core Trust Seal certification in September of 2025. So we're very excited about that. Next slide, please. So our priorities for the near future, um, we are working very hard with our colleagues on our team and our colleagues across the field of fair compliance and metadata to try to overcome the lack of community standards for laboratory analytical data. We are trying to align on method metadata profiles. We are trying to build out data dictionaries that are compliant to PDS-4, which is the standard that we are following. Um, and one large thing that we hope to really invest some thought and time into in the near term is the loss of users to a generalist repository like Zenodo. Um, so we are constantly trying to determine how we can improve our usability so that we can be compliant with the NASA policy, but also support our users in the best way. And with that, I'll wrap it up. Hopefully, I didn't go too much over time.
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate you stepping in and being available as Kirsten was unable to be on the meeting today. I do. want to, thank you for sharing about Astromat and ask one question. And I certainly welcome the audience to ask questions as well, because I know you have to step out a little early. Um, is there any one thing about Astromat's journey through certification, as a new certified body that you could share that was very memorable for you, or was a challenge, or any tip or trick that you'd offer to another who's seeking their first ever certification through Core Trust Seal specifically?
Well, I learned a lot from my colleague, Robert Downs, because he has been on the kind of both sides of the application process and the review process. And the best piece of advice he said is don't reveal too much. So answer the questions, answer them well, but don't let them under the hood too much. But it does, so that helped in terms of writing the application. But it also gave us a great opportunity to look under our hoods and see what we wanted to improve, what we could improve in a realistic way. Um, so I guess that would be the biggest piece of advice I would give is to be very deliberate in the way that you describe your repository.
Wonderful, thank you for that. We have two other questions specifically in the chat. I'm happy to read
Oh,
them, but you
sure.
may be able to as well. First from Mickey Lindler. They're asking about Oasis and ISO 16363 and what that might have done for Astromat, if there's any thought to those two.
No, I can't answer that question directly now, but I would love to give it some thought and I'm happy to connect offline. I'll share my contact information in the chat, but I would love to connect about that question offline if that's okay. Perfect.
Sure.
Thanks for the thumbs up.
Thanks so much, Mickey. Ingrid, hey, good day to you. Her question is, could you elaborate a bit on what you and the archive see as the added value of going through the process of getting certified?
I think that for us, the value was to internally audit ourselves. The goal was not certification. The goal was to compare our operations to an international, what is emerging as kind of an international or community standard for trustworthiness in repositories. And so that was very helpful for us. I think that we would like as a data steward, these are things that I'm thinking about constantly. So it was nice to have a structured way to evaluate our repository. I think the fact that our application was well received and we received the certification was just kind of gravy. It was just like the cherry on top of the improvements that we were able to make. Can you please
Excellent.
elaborate
Thank
on
you for that. And we have another question. Can
that?
you elaborate on what you plan to do to address the loss of users to Zenodo? It looks like you've got a carrot and stick policy about to come into play, so I'll let you discuss that.
Yes, this is kind of near and dear to our hearts at this moment in time, especially as NASA is setting up a Zenodo community. So the first barrier to usability for Astromat we see is our user interfaces. They can seem like they require a bit more time upfront from the user, and then there is potential for back and forth with the curator, whereas in Zenodo, there's no curation. So, streamlining our process of submission and curation, even more so, adding in additional automation just to make it easier for the submitter is where we're hoping to start. And also to advertise that while it may take more time for us to curate your data, we are ensuring its discovery and reusability in a specialist archive rather than um, risking it not being able to be used to the the level that you may want.
Okay, we have one more question, and if there are any other further questions, Molly's going to provide her email address, which you can then communicate with her, and she'll be able to respond to further questions down the road. But Davwe asks if you could share about the challenges you go through during the certification process, Molly. What did that look like? Which requirements were hardest? That kind of thing. What took longer time than others? Any feedback for that?
Sure. I will say that some sections did require collaboration with our developers and making sure I didn't take, make sure I weighed collaborating with them against their priorities. Um, I would say the hardest part in authoring the application was to keep the answers succinct. You may want to write 2 to 3 pages on a particular uh, section, but they might only want 1 page or 500 words. So being succinct and making sure you're answering all the points in a clear and concise way while not overdoing it, there's kind of a dance there. I wouldn't say any particular section took longer than others to author once we had all of the information that we needed. The the kind of internal research, the internal audit was what took the time.
Thank you, Molly.
Of course,
I
and with
appreciate
that,
you. Please go ahead.
well, I was gonna say with that, I'll put my email address in the chat. Please feel free to email me with any questions, and Mickey, we can touch base offline about your question. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate your ability to transition on such a short notice. My best to you. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
your
much.
time today and for standing in for Kirsten.
Of course, have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Next, we're going to go into our second presenter who's going to talk about being a repository that is unable to be certified. Johan, thank you for being here. If I remember correctly, you're a digital preservation specialist at CSCIT, if I'm correct, Center for Science. And you've worked with digital preservation for over a decade, and you've been the product owner, if I read correctly, on the National Digital Preservation Services. So, Johan, the floor is yours. Just let me know when you need me to transition slides, and I'll move them forward for you. Thank you.
Yeah, will do. I hope my voice is carrying out okay. Good. So yeah, my name is Johan Schlander, and I represent CSC, and we are a company in Finland, and we are owned by the Ministry of Education and Culture and the Finnish universities and high schools together. And our mission is to provide research infrastructure and high performance computing to the Finnish university sort of ecosystem. And what we are also providing are national services for research data management and digital preservation, which I will talk about now. So the next slide, please. So I'll briefly talk about the FAIR data services that provide services for research data management before I'll go to our digital preservation services. And our background is that we've had discussions with uh, the Finnish institution, the Finnish Social Science Archive, that have the CTS certification, and they have a member who has been on the board. And we had discussions about them for to apply for CTS for our services too, because it seemed quite important for the aspect of trustworthiness that we also wanted to show in our services. And CTS would be sort of helpful, of course, to show that you are a trustworthy operator in the field of research data management and digital preservation. But as I will come to soon, we deemed together with the Finnish representative that there was no idea to apply for CTS because there are certain criteria that doesn't really work for us. But yeah, let me introduce the FAIR data services. So they are a bunch of services, yes, that help researchers and research institutions, mainly universities, in managing research data. So we provide services to store research data and publish them, and also tools for creating dataset descriptions and publishing the metadata online. And we have a national research data catalog also called ETSIN. And our main sort of users are, of course, researchers, but also the research institutions that curate and own the data. And they are linked to the digital preservation also. So next slide, please. And our services are constantly being developed, and we develop them together with the Finnish universities and research institutions, because as we are state-owned and also owned by these universities, the use of them are free of charge, and they come from the public funding. So we also, of course, develop these services according to the needs of our users. And one thing that we are currently developing quite much is the curating aspect, that the organization, that when researchers or research projects create data sets and describe them and publish the data as fair data, open data, that the institutions have good tools to curate the descriptions and the metadata. So these are among the other things that we are currently developing. But we can take the next slide and go to the digital preservation services that I think it's the main focus today. So we basically produce two national digital preservation services in Finland, for both for cultural heritage institutions that are archives, museums, libraries, and galleries. And then we have a research data digital preservation service for research data. And these two you utilize a common solution in the background. So we have the same sort of methods and models, and also file formats, for example, and metadata requirements, regardless if the content is from a library, archive, museum, or from university. And the goal is that the ownership of the data remains with the partner organization. That is the organization that owns the data and curates the metadata. So everything that comes to our service is already curated, because our users are not individual people or individual researchers. It's organizations, and they are granted a quota in our services by the Ministry of Education and Culture. And the use of our services is free of charge, because it's public funding behind this. And it's used by many of the larger or biggest sort of national operators, such as in the cultural heritage sector, it's the National Archives of Finland or National Library of Finland, and so on. And most of the Finnish universities also utilize our preservation service for research data. And this has now been in production in a bit over 10 years, actually, our service. So we had a celebration last year. But next slide, please. And this is how we sort of describe the collaborative aspect of digital preservation in our services. And that is that we sort of define digital preservation on three levels. The bottom level is we call bit level preservation, and that's something that our service mainly handles by its own, with little input from our partner organization. And that the bit level preservation is about preserving the bits, so it's backups, it's integrity checking, it's infrastructure management, replication, and all the technical stuff that keeps the bits safe and secure. And the top level is the semantic preservation, and that's about describing the content and curating the content, and also knowing the needs of the designated communities that use the data, and providing a good rationale for preserving the data sets or the content. And this is how the partner organizations, the cultural heritage institutions, or the research institutions approach digital preservation. So they will handle the description and the curation and so on. And then we will meet in the middle level, which we call logical preservation, which is about preserving the usability of the content. That is file formats, utilizing file formats that are usable with current tools, and also migrating file formats when necessary. All preservation planning actions, and lots of administrative and technical metadata that ensure that the contents can technically be accessible and usable. And this middle level is done together as a close collaboration, because when you do, for example, file format migrations, you do need a lot of input from both the curators and the institutions that know the content and know their needs, And then you also need a lot of technical knowledge about file formats and how certain actions impact the files and the data. So this is the middle level is the exciting level where we do lots of collaboration together nationally. Next slide, please. So this is sort of how we view the core trust seal. So core trust seal sort of assumes that you have like a single repository that performs semantic, logical, and bit level curation. And our model, in our model, this is sort of shared between organizations so that the partner organizations that use our services are responsible for the curation, and we do the technical level curation sort of. And the issue, of course, in this is that we do not perform curation by ourselves, but it's in the domain of the partner organizations. And also this includes also the ownership, appraisal actions, and the rationale for preserving, which are, of course, very important criteria when applying for a core trust seal. And nationally, we have a few organizations that already are certified using core trust seal. And for example, it's the Finnish Social Science Data Archive, the Music Archive Finland, and the Language Data Bank of Finland. And we sort of help these organizations. They sort of refer to us in their applications that our services handles the technical bits, and we also support other organizations if they would apply for CTS, so that we can sort of create a template and help them fill out the technical bits that our services cover. So this is the sort of current view or how it is nowadays. Next slide, please. And the issue with, of course, this thing is that although we do not perform curation in our services, our service model still requires curated content. So we have, when an organization utilizes or becomes a partner organization and starts to utilize our digital preservation services, we sign a service contract which sort of stipulates lots of responsibilities to different parties. And one or many of these sort of responsibilities also require that the partner organization performs curation and provides descriptive metadata, for example. And all the preservation levels I talked about earlier, the semantic, logical, and bit level levels are included in the service model. So, for example, we say that CSC will handle replication and backup and data management on that level. But we also, then the partner organization has to provide descriptive metadata, for example. And our service is not open for anyone, so only organizations that perform curation or curating organizations can join our service. And it's the ministry who decides who can join our service. And it's cultural heritage organizations that already perform curation as part of their natural operations. But also research data sets from universities have to be curated because we cannot preserve anything. It is of course costly. So we have appraisal requirements and curation requirements also for research data sets that come from universities. And currently we have over 4 petabytes. I think we are close to 5 petabytes and now with curated data and comprehensive metadata. And we have, like I said, descriptive metadata requirements, but also requirements for technical, administrative, and structural metadata when the organizations provide SIPs, submission information packages, to us, to our ingest. And we check them. We have quite a thorough ingest process where we validate both metadata and file formats on a technical level. So, for example, invalid files or files that are not supported by our service are not accepted. So we perform quite thorough validation steps in the ingest process. And we also provide for the research data side a metadata repository with well-defined data models and a public catalog for viewing data sets. And we also support open data access in the FAIR data services because we require that some sort of at least some metadata has to be opened. the normal use case is, of course, when it's fair data, that the data itself it's open. But for some specific cases, you can also have metadata public, and then you have to ensure that the data is made accessible to the researcher in some other ways if it's not sort of online currently. And we also provide access services for providing access to digital content in the fair data services. Next slide, please. And this is something that I will not go through this table, but this is just we collected some sort of evidence when going through the core trustee requirements and sort of try to map that who does what do we do, and what do the partner organizations do, and how do we support, and what sort of evidence is either publicly available or available by asking us. So a lot of these sort of criteria are covered together, sort of that either it's us or the ministry or then the partner organizations that do it together with us. So, but yeah, next slide, please. And I think this is my final slide, and this is just sort of a recap of what I was trying to say, that we provide our services provide technical level curation, and we provide guidance on data management on a national level. And we also facilitate national discussions on data quality and processes. And we currently have a national discussion on research data appraisal and appraisal criteria. And we do have a strong remit from the Ministry of Education and Culture to foster data management on national scale, including data quality and capabilities in the area of digital preservation. So advocacy is also very important for our services. And the focus is, of course, that we are natural centralized services, and we collaborate with partner organizations quite thoroughly. And our services are also active international members in international sort of networks like the Open Preservation Foundation and the Digital Preservation Coalition. And finally, we are probably not the only service worldwide with sort of mandatory appraisal and semantic curation performed by the users. So some sort of maybe technical levels, core trust seal or something else that would take into account this collaborative model, but still understands that the data is curated. And this is not just, a Dropbox, but highly curated data with metadata requirements. So something like that would be nice. Yes, that was a quick, sorry, I hope I didn't speak too quickly or so.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And this is a fantastic example of how partnerships make things happen. I think you're still very engaged and involved in other uh, certifications, not just you going after Core Trust Seal, but supporting the other entities in your country in doing so. You were at one time Core Trust Seal certified, is that correct?
It was I think the Language Bank of Finland is part of CSC, so they are certified.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're a part of the supporting entities that make sure that the technical infrastructure meets those requirements. And I really appreciate, if you will, that crosswalk to the Core Trust Seal certification requirements, because it showed really who does what. And I think that's important and useful for sharing. Are there any other questions from the audience? Does anybody want to put anything out into chat? Ah, Ingrid, thank you so much. We have one now. There is the TRSP's working group might be something you might be interested in, and that's a great suggestion. Link is in the chat if you want to learn a little bit more about it. Other questions out there. This is an example of a infrastructure that couldn't really be certified as Core Trust Seal, but is definitely engaged in multiple repositories going after their Core Trust Seal certification.
Um,
Yahweh?
Yeah, Meredith, I have a question for Johan. I
Mhm.
think one of the purpose for curation is trying to make sure that the quality of data is high and also is interoperable um, with other the same data types. And So since you run a service, uh, do you track that the usage of data that may curate at different level, like like so maybe provided by the certified repositories, or maybe provided by the repository has not been certified, and do you see there is a uh, kind of usage difference or maybe the reuse difference of the data?
Yeah, we have, for example, in our ingest process, lots of automated checks, and we check, for example, that the descriptive metadata has to be in place and that it has to fill certain quality criteria. For example, it has to be like we do schema validation and schematron validation to check that some elements are needed. And also the metadata has to be in a standard that is approved nationally. So we have our specifications are updated each year, and one of the part of the specification is listing which metadata standards are for descriptive metadata are acceptable. So we do sort of a technical level checks, yes. And also for the research in the fair data services, we have these domain specific data models that we support also.
So do you have a usage metrics? Do you track them?
We have I think in the fair data services, yes, we check we have statistical reports on how they're used, yes, some so forth, yeah. But it's yeah, statistical reports mainly.
Thank you. Great question, Daphne. Any other questions from the audience today? We'll have plenty of time to continue, so feel free to add questions to the chat. I'm sure, Johan, you're welcome to answer them as they come up, or we'll have plenty of time to discuss as we go down the road. So thank you again for presenting for us today, your use
Thanks.
case of, and we will move on to our third one. Thank you so much. Okay. Next up, we have Dawei and import, and this is an example of repositories that were recently recertified. And with that, Dawei, thank you. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. And so I'm Dawei Lin and the Associate Director for Bioinformatics at the Division of Allergy, Immunology, and Transplantation at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, and is one of the 27 institute at NIH. And so the I think the presentation is the purpose is to really reflect a I think is a broad journey for import to to be part of standardization of data repository operations in the biomedical domain. And so import, I just kind of briefly is talk about what it is. Is it is a home for immunology research data, and our division found probably like 40% of the immunology research at the NIH. So we're essentially shoulder a big portion of the immunology research community, and so how to maximize the value of the data generated from our research is very important. And as Molly mentioned, kind of similar to the Astromat, uh, the motivation for establish the repositories, like we run a lot of very expensive clinical trials, from millions of dollars to tens of million dollars, and we do this like probably a dozen, found a dozen like a new clinical trial each year. So like how that data be archived and be reused is very much in our interest. So the import has been operating for more than 20 years. Uh, Meredith, if you go to the next slide. And so currently, there is a uh, like close to like 1,400 studies shared through import. And I just check, I think last time when we present import at the RDA a couple of years ago was like 700. So we already doubled the size since we presented last time. And then on the left side, you can also see that the people are using the import data that in a very creative way and publish in the top journals. And these are the reuse that has nothing to do with the original project. It just use the data in a different way. So that's demonstrate the quality and the utility of the import data. And on the right side is a screen capture of the current import uh, the the contents. You can see on the subject side there is 100 like more than 180,000 human subjects data are there. So that uh, uh, allow us to have uh, probably like more than I forgot exactly the number, probably like the more than 10,000 users, and then we generate probably the reuse paper like a couple of thousand per year. So I want to bring you to the bottom of the picture. There is a culture seal um, the cultural seal logo there. So we have been certified and then recertified. So you can see like we're very committed uh, to standardize the operation and demonstrate to the community that we are committed to have a trustworthy operation. And besides culture seal, the import also designated by Nature and PLOS journals as their designated repository for immunology data. So, so we're not just kind of want to get like a certification and then then keep as that. I think was the certification is more as a way to help our improve our operation. So next slide. I think that's what I want to spend most of time on is talk about like why we do the certification at the first place, and then why we wanted to do the recertification. Um, so um, so as I said before, uh, that the import is somewhat represent a use case for biomedical repository, um, which is very different from the social science and the geoscience because they are have very clear case. They want to archive their data and then need to be used by other scientists. So the so biomedical data is a little bit different. I think definitely the outcome is worth to archiving. Um, but on the other hand, is the biotechnology it advanced really fast. Like they change, like after 10 years, like uh, the the like the technology generated data, it will be replaced by another technology. Is that data worthwhile to save, or you're kind of just using the new technology to regenerate data? So there was that kind of technology dynamic, and there is also uh, the most biomedical repository is grow organically. Like there's a need and people need to collaborate, and so they generate the repository to share data. Uh, and so it's not there is there is like a good guidance at the beginning, and you follow through the instructions. So it's more as needed. Um, but on the other hand, it doesn't mean like say they grow organically is not important. Is I think there is like a lot of high impact repository like the Protein Data Bank, which is also certified by Cartra Seal, and actually is right after the import was certified, import was the first certified repository. And so PDB, as many of you know, that is the basis for the AI learning of protein folding, and they won the Nobel Prize last year. Um, so there is a lot of high impact uh, uh, repository like serve the community. Uh, so then, um, given all these dynamics, uh, I think there's a bigger question: is that is that how do we make sure all those repository can continue to be a part of a robust data ecosystem? Like, we there those repositories grow to be the fundamental of the biomedical research uh, field. But how do we make sure, like, they're continuing to provide the service people need? They're not go away. And the that's just not a hypothetical question. Actually, was you will see probably like every couple of years on the Nature Science, and they will say, there's certain repository for funding, like for example, like the Swiss prod, they don't have funding to support, and they want to continue it. And then they'll have a whole community to come up and write letters and say, this is kind of the repository. I rely on my postdoc work and my PhD work, and they cannot be gone. And then there was additional funding to support that. And then those type of instances happen more and more often. And at the NIH, uh, there is a case is for model organism repositories. Um, so each of the repositories is address the need of a particular species, like mouse, fruit fly, Drosophila, yeast, all that important model repositories. But uh, but all of them are I operate separately, and they go through this. I think with the previous talk about get the data ingested, curated, and released to and build an interface to share with the community. And but when the funding uh, is tight, and the people were thinking like is that there is a way to um, kind of standardize the operation, maybe improve in an organized way. Uh, could they be collaborate uh, and to see if they can learn from each other how the improvement can be made. So so I think as uh, uh, so the way of kind of summarize uh, this situation is that so the biomedical field does really need a um, a way to organize themselves, and and then it comes to I think at RDA and in it's almost 10 years ago is at the plenary in Tokyo, Japan. And I was able to talk with Ingrid Dillo, who is also like presenting uh, in the audience, and and she told me about the data seal of approval. At that time, I don't think I see probably there's a discussion about data seal approval and also the WDS certification, which is very similar. And they're trying to see if they can merge together. And that's the first time I learned there already the standard certification exists for repositories. And there was also ISO. But uh, so I was very excited about it, but the concept is really complicated. It take me a couple months just to understand, what is requirements means, what are all these standards, purpose one, what is different between the standards, um, what their process is, what needed to get certified. And then the Culture Seal uh, uh, born in 2017. So they merged the data seal approval and WDS and have one standard, and that make my life is much easier. And so we're working on to get the import uh, uh, certified, and then we go through that process. So so I talk a little bit long, but I think it's kind of trying to address the first bullet point of the initial certification is that so in a sense, import is already a trust kind of repository. Like people put the data in, and also our clinical network rely on import to share data. But the certification is really trying to help import to think bigger, like the to see if they can make a case for biomedical repository to follow, because the new technology is keep on creating for research, and the new repository going to pump up a lot, and how do they follow? So that's kind of what the import uh, trying to do, like we're trying to kind of see if there's a standard way that we can help um, generate example for biomedical repository. And then, but along the way, that the go through the uh, improvement, and also that the help improve the import operation. I think uh, the one example that we did not realize is that the import has been there for a while, and we don't even know who owned the import. Is like owned by government, is owned by the principal investigators, or owned by the contractors who run the import. So so that helps us that to clear that up. So we have a lot of internal discussions and then say, who will be able uh, to do the certification for import as an organization. And then there will be some hard questions, like how are we going to preserve import data? Um, and how do we continue import operation if we have some challenges, like it may be funding reductions, like what is the plan for that? And that turned out to be, I think, a question a lot of biomedical repository thought that would be useful. Like, have you asked the question that if there's no funding, how are you gonna uh, how your data gonna survive? Uh, so that I think is something that we learned from the initial certification. Um, so that's I think the quick uh, uh, description of like the initial motivation, and then after the the first certification, and then we get the recertified. And that I think is is an interesting process because in the sense we already go through this process. We have the seal, uh, but but what the things kind of motivate us to think about research certification is that in the first round we did not answer uh, we feel did not answer the preservation plan um, very well. We have a plan, we have a kind of idea, but not really implement the plan. So that is something that we want to still working on, and and also the cultural seal, uh, the requirement will update every 3 years. And I think during our second recertification, the cultural seal has a lot of changes. The principles are still there, but there's a lot of changes. And so that's kind of um, motivate us to go through the requirements again because those cultural seal requirements also reflect the evolving user need. So that would go through that process. Um, and then the and I think the also uh, the so that's I talked about the top two bullets point, but the other the third one is interesting. I think I put there as demonstrate the continued commitment to quality, trust, and long-term stewardship. And so we found out actually the by talking with other repositories, especially the newly certified repositories, uh, like in the biomedical domain, and they noticed like uh, there is a the, the import has not been recertified yet. And so they ask when they do the presentation as a talking point. And so like we now maintain the current status of certification, and that's kind of where we realize like the import is indeed I think in the process of recertified. Um, so that's kind of another kind of motivation from the a little friendly competition that like yes we need to continue doing this and kind of reflect the progress import has made and then that got the recertification. So so that's a couple of motivations that that I talk about. I think that's what I want to talk, and I'll be happy to um, answer any questions and welcome comments.
Thank you for sharing, Dawei, about import. I'm going to start us off with a question that I have. So, oftentimes, we know there's three major international certifications. So, you have Cortra Seal, Nestor Seal, and then also ISO 16363. And there's others, but those are just for those three specifically. Is there a reason why you haven't stretched your wings and tried for a different certification? Or do you feel that Cortra Seal meets your needs and it's enough work to stay current with that one? So any feedback you have on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Meredith. So we did spend a lot of times to study the other uh, standards like ISO. Uh, I think David, who is in charge of the ISO standards, actually gave a course in Washington, D.C., like as a week-long course. We kind of learned that. Um, is I think like have a great philosophy and but when we discuss with the research um, repositories and a lot of other colleagues, and I think that maybe is too complicated. Uh, I think it's maybe um, for the financial institution, like then they really require a certification to have the trust of the customers. It may be a viable way to do it. And but for research, as I said, I think, but this may not be applied for other repository. I think, but for biomedical repository, a lot of them are research based. So it's not like, you know, they need to address every aspect of how repository operate correctly in the perfect way. So I think after the discussion with a lot of colleagues, I think for biomedical repository, maybe Cultra is good enough for now. And and then for the Nestor seal, I think that is maybe Mickey can talk more. I think the it seems is in the middle. It's good compromise, but it's pretty um, German based. You know, we don't see actually there is a active certification support at the time we explored the Culture Seal. So then, so the Culture Seal is more like a natural uh, choice for us.
Thank you for sharing. I don't have any other questions in the chat right now. Oh, yes. Mickey's gonna go find the English version of Nestor. She's gonna go find the link for us. So thank you for that. I know it's out there. Any
Yeah.
other feedback or comments for Dawei on his and Import's experience on certification and the path and journey that was taken? There will be plenty of other opportunities. Dawei, I think I turn over the remaining slides for you until we come back to close out. So if you need me, I'm here otherwise.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think the next probably half an hour we're gonna really have open floor discussion to reflect I think the journey for repository choose ways to demonstrate their trustworthiness. Uh, and I think as the discussion we already see, uh, there is a need that and there is also desire for repository to get certified. But it seems not uh, a good uh, approach for or feeding approach for every situation. So then I think we heard that Johan talk about the institution may not pursuing the certification with the current standards, like the repository certification standard. I think that's understandable. And then and there is a repository may want to go through the formal certification process, and they can just satisfy with the self assessment process. So I think the we probably want to drill down a little bit to see um, if any anybody have the different reflections, like to share your story and maybe like some new um, things that we haven't talked about yet. So, Meredith, if we can go to the next slide. So this may be some questions that that people have in mind. Like we heard this a lot. So I think at this point I would just want to open the floor to invite people just to maybe raise your hands or open your microphone to share your stories. So Um, I think maybe uh the people can share like what I think Mickey some put something in the chat.
Anu has her hand up though, I think, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I mean, from import's perspective, even though there is a strong support for recertification for CTS, it still needs a significant level of effort in terms of personnel and resources to go through the certification. So that may be one of the key drivers for us repository not either to simply do a self-assessment if they are really if they have limited resources or essentially not recertify.
Mm.
And another maybe comment is, as Dave mentioned, for import, we just didn't realize that the certification time frame was over, and we had to go back to recertify until it was brought to our attention. So I wonder if maybe the certifying bodies could be a little bit more proactive in notifications to the repositories. Just a few comments.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks, Anu. Any other comments?
I
Uh,
do have one comment. Sorry, I have my hand up. I just started speaking. I'm just curious of instead of trying to always sell certification as something to prove long-term trustworthiness, there's a better return on investment to actually focus on the short-term positive effects on data quality contained within repositories, and to focus on that also as an internal sales pitch of why even bother going through certification, and if you consider that in any way.
mhm. Okay. Matt?
Yes, hi, Matt Chandler. I'm at Princeton University and I'm the product owner for our institutional data repository, Princeton Data Commons. So we haven't gone through a certification process with our repository yet. And a lot of the things that are holding us back are funding and staff time, the effort it's going to take to get the certification. And so those are the costs, and then wondering about the benefits to us. So we currently have lots of our researchers who are publishing in our repository. They are getting their DOIs. They are able to meet their journal and funder requirements with that. They don't need us to be CTS or otherwise certified in order to get what they need. So that is something I think that would push us to accelerate. It has been kind of vaguely on our roadmap. We haven't scheduled a set date, but we would like to get Core Trust Seal certification. And the thing that would make us decide that that's a priority is if those who use our repository told us that they needed us to have that certification in order to meet their own needs.
I see. Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Matt. So I think, Matt, maybe there's one point you alluded to is that so your repository currently is operating, so you don't have to have CDS to continue to operate to get funding. And so then I think uh, that is a kind of one things that we're also considering, like, in the medical domain. Like, there is certification for, like, say, for example, good manufacturing standards. If a facility produce chemicals, if they do not have that certification, they cannot do. But for repository, if you don't have a culture seal certification, you can still do it. So so what is the idea you think is that you can convince the certification is necessary for you to continue your operation?
So we have institutional buy-in for our repository. We have support to build and maintain it, and we have two full-time curators that are part of it. And a big part of the justification for that is that it improves the visibility of the output of research from Princeton researchers. So we continue to have that buy-in. I expect we will for a while. And I think the thing that could cause us to dedicate more of our resources in kind of the soft pitch is if the university says, well, it would be even better for us, even better for our reputation, even better for the reputation of our researchers if we had certification for our repository, not just the presence of it. So if we got that kind of message, that's another thing that would motivate us. So I had mentioned the sort of external motivation. If the researchers' journals or funders were saying that they must have a CTS certified repository, that could cause us to move. Or internally, if we had the university saying, well, it'd be even better for our reputation if we had certification, I think that would cause us to prioritize it as well.
Right. Right. Okay. Thanks. So I I saw Olivier from Culture Seal is also in the audience. Uh, I wonder if Olivier had I'm kind of sorry to put it on the spot. I think, do you have any feedbacks from the applicants or the people who uh, are kind of in the process considering certifications, to see what their motivations and what their needs are?
Um, Hi. Uh, so um, we don't really have any feedback from the applicants to know why they are certifying or recertifying. That I can just provide some statistics or numbers, for example, and we know that we have something like 280, I think, repositories which have been certified, unique repositories. We have something like 180 active certifications, which means that some of the repository are in the process of recertifying, but have not done so yet for various reasons. Globally, we have that 80% number of repositories which choose to recertify, which is pretty good, I think.
Actually, how many, sorry, how many get recertified?
80% of the 200 and something unique repositories which have been certified at least once have recertified.
I see.
It could be even a little bit more than 80%, 85 maybe, something like that.
I see. Yeah, that it is pretty big numbers. I forgot to introduce to audience. I think Olivier is the current chair of the Culture
Oh
Seal.
yeah,
Also the
yeah.
co-chair.
So I'm the chair of the Culture Seal board.
Yeah. So so Olivier, do you could you maybe talk a little bit about, like, what are the kind of changes of the the new requirements?
Yeah, I mean, you said, well, I have to explain first what the revision process is for the culture seal requirements. So basically, the requirements are revised every 3 years, and we are in the version 4 of these requirements, which means that we've had three revisions. This year, we have tried to keep the changes to a minimum and be as stable as possible. There were some significant changes in version 3. They are very small in version 4. It's basically rewording, avoiding ambiguities, clarifications, and things like that. The only change that we have is for the levels of curation, which we have transformed into levels of curation and preservation. The rationale behind that is that we want to promote active preservation, and we needed to clarify that for in the description of those levels. But that's the only significant change that we've had this year.
I see. Thanks. And there's a question from Esther Plumb and asking about that how long the application generally take because there's a lot of resources needed and maybe only like certain repository can like probably privileged repository can do it and
So
is it possible to make it the mandatory to get certified?
you say that it depends of the maturity of your repository and on the level of the documentation that you have, right? Ultra Seal is 16 requirements, so it's basically 16 questions that you have to answer, providing some public evidences. If you have those documents already available, that should be kind of straightforward, a few weeks time. If you don't have them and you need to produce them, that will be a little bit longer. But I mean, it's generally a question of months at maximum. And it's even shorter when you recertify because you already have some of the required documentation already available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I would add on to that is the I think that the uh, to prepare for the repository, if they choose to do the certification or not doing it, I think is kind of uh, what is originated from the trust principles. Like the like the there's 5 principles that to kind of describe what this trustworthy repository should look like. And we're going to have a working group discussion tomorrow, I think, is that um, so a lot of people that just kind of learn from the principles and do the self-assessment if it's needed to be, but I think it's kind of if um, if they can follow like what the big lesson people learned, like it's crappy in the trust principles. And that's kind of another way for people to just get started. It's not to replace the certification standard or any standard. It's just kind of a way to incorporate uh, and involve like stimulate participation as much as people want. So maybe that's something uh, that people can look into too. Meredith, they have. Uh, sorry, I'm hard to follow the chat.
Sure. Discussions on the challenge of certification, um, and just can't afford it, both staff time and or cost of the certification and the efforts. And my response was, did they happen to uncover if they were performing self-assessments where you had gone to in your conversation?
Mm, mm, mm.
And I guess the answer was they've done some outlining, but not a full self-assessment. Um, so Because self-assessment really is the first thing you do when you're going to get certified is where am I at and do I meet these qualifications? And you can't really do that without assessing where you are across
Yeah.
your repository, in my opinion.
I think I maybe I want to add another perspective. I think we're gonna talk with the a lot of other repositories like the NH probably found like 300 to 500 repositories. And I think there's another lesson we learned is that is need to first working on like what is the value for repository certification. I think the funding and staff always the challenge. I think it's not just about certification. I probably do anything else. You also uh, uh, encounter the same challenge about funding and staff times. I think it's very important um, to determine what the value for the repository. And there was some time I think is I think for uh, the the repository if they apply for a grant and it's sometimes it's hard to convince the reviewers like how good your operation is. But if you have a certification get the checked by the third party, and that's save a lot of time of convincing the reviewers. So that type of value proposition, I think, is important to overcome, the challenges for funding and staff times.
I'm going to move forward a little bit, a few slides. So this is just some literature for individuals, and the slides are available to you. You see the link in the collaborative notes to take, to really lead the discussion. These aren't in any order except for by most current. But these are just some examples and some thoughts that involved around certification. And then if I can find my mouse, the next and the last type of repository, since we're going towards the self-assessment conversation, I wanted to bring this up with the different questions of those individual repositories that only perform self-assessments. And Dawei, we have about 2 minutes left, so I'd like to welcome the audience if they have any tips or feedback or questions that they'd like to bring up. Now would be the time. So please feel free to put them in the chat or Dawei, I'll let you take back over. I just wanted to mention our time frame.
No, that sounds good. Yep. So Lisa put some comments. Do you want to open the mic to talk a little bit?
Yeah, hi everyone. Not just to add, I had this conversation, and it was just quite an interesting conversation because it highlighted also per perceived biases. My last comment that they were conscious of, on one hand, very much the cost of first getting certified, and then, also already thinking about, maintaining the certification, and so the cost of recertification, because they were like, if you get certified once, we would want to maintain it. So they were thinking also already in those terms. And then also very conscious of, or, they had this perceived notion at least that they had gathered from, also discussions with other repository managers in the geographical space that they were in, that there is, it's harder for smaller repositories, it's harder for repositories in Central Eastern Europe, for example, to get certified. So there's, they named a number of barriers basically what kept them back from going down this route of certification.
Yeah. So there's one more question in the chat from Yoshihiro. I think it's a very good question. Like, what is a tangible benefit? I think the probably in one of the literature slide, I think there some work from Ingrid Dilo. They had done the survey of the benefit of the certification is I think some time ago. Yeah, and then there was some like there's it's published like a couple years ago, but I think it's a lot of them are still apply. Maybe you can follow with that, and if not, like they um, send out the email. Would be happy to kind of talk through it. And my email address is this. Okay, Meredith, I think we our time is up.
Yes, thank you everybody for attending. The Everything is still open and available. Please make sure to keep this conversation going. We just glanced over the very top of this iceberg. There's so many more conversations we should have. So join the RDA and WDS Certification Digital Repositories Interest Group. I want to thank you for the conversation today, and let's keep it going. And if you have interest, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And I look forward to spending the rest of the conference with you. Take care, everybody.